Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be starting a brand new series regarding what mods you need to make a certain amount of horsepower for the Focus ST. It's going to be on the stock turbo, and we're going to start off with a 250 to 270 wheel horsepower range. And I'm going to talk to you about what mods you need to make this horsepower, and then what mods you need to make 300 wheel horsepower, which would be the max. So to start off, a stock Focus ST has 225 to 230 wheel horsepower with the BorgWarner KO3. It has an integrated exhaust manifold built into the cylinder head. It has a internal wastegate design with a canister or actuator. It also has a integrated bypass valve. So basically instead of venting out to the atmosphere, it recirculates the boost pressure in the charge pipes back into compressor housing. The general max PSI for the KO3 on these cars is going to be between 23 to 25 pounds of boost. So in order to make 250 wheel to 270 wheel horsepower, you're going to need the following mods to do this. It does not have to be in a specific order here. It's just these are the general mods that you would need to make this kind of horsepower on the stock turbo. So the number one mod I'd recommend is a intercooler. So the front mount intercooler can be a 3.5 inch core, which means basically it's how thick it is. That's generally what everyone gets. You can also get the thicker, bigger ones, which is like 5.5 inches thick, like the CPE or Depot Racing. They have a Mishimoto one out there now. They have a Whoosh intercooler out there. So a front mount intercooler is also going to help you maintain horsepower. It's not going to make you gain any horsepower because it lowers the charge temps. So doing back-to-back pulls is going to allow you to run cooler, more efficient charge temps. It's going to help prevent any knock and also keep your pistons in check. Cast pistons are the weak point of these cars. Also, you definitely want to get a high flow downpipe, whether it's catless or you get a 200 or 300 cell high flow downpipe. That would definitely increase your horsepower. That's one of the first mods you're gonna basically add horsepower. One of the nicest intercoolers I like is a CV Fab intercooler, and also they have really nice charge pipes and a high flow downpipe. So definitely get your discount 5% off using BB5 at your checkout on cvfab.com. So the upgraded intercooler is going to allow your charge pipes to go from 160 degrees down to basically ambient temperatures, whatever it is outside. That's what you're going to want. So a bigger core is going to allow you to be more efficient. So just remember that for future mods, if you ever plan to go bigger turbo, more horsepower, keep in mind you want to go with a bigger intercooler. The next thing I'd recommend is definitely getting a dry flow AEM drop-in filter. You do not have to replace the air box or the intake tube. A lot of people do that. You don't have to. The intake box is highly efficient, especially for the stock turbo. Definitely recommend just keeping it simple and getting the AEM drop-in filter. It's about 70 bucks on Amazon. Really great filter. It's got a lifetime warranty, has no oil, and it's easy to clean. You can wash it every 50,000 miles or less. Generally, you can just blow it out with air. But having a Cobb programmer or even an SCT programmer is definitely going to allow you to run everything more efficiently and make more horsepower, especially up to the 270 wheel and beyond that. Now, obviously, you're going to want good 91 or 93 pump gas for making this kind of horsepower. You're going to also want step coulter plugs. I highly recommend the Brisk RR14YS plugs. They're equivalent to a NGK 6510, but they're a lot better as far as you have a more cleaner burn with the Brisk plugs because it has silver as a metal, and that's the most conductive metal out there other than copper. And when you have a more efficient burn, you're going to have less black soot in the back of your car. You're definitely going to want to upgrade your charge pipes to match up to the 2.5-inch inlet outlet. Otherwise, you really don't need charge pipes to make this kind of horsepower. You know, you definitely probably should do it just because you've done the intercooler and it just matches up with everything. CV Fab makes a really good kit as a combo with the intercoolers. I run a Mishimoto silicone cold charge pipe. I really like it. It allows me to take off my intake manifold without disconnecting the charge pipe. I can just disconnect it from the intercooler and then get it out of there. An aluminum charge pipe has 4 clamps versus the silicone charge pipe has 2. So the more clamps you have, the more chances of charge pipe popping off. Next thing you'd want is a 2.5-inch to 3-inch exhaust catback setup to allow the turbo gases to exit more freely and have less back pressure. The downpipe is going to be the biggest bolt-on mod you're going to have for horsepower gain, but the exhaust in conjunction with the downpipe is going to help the turbo breathe more freely, spool better, more efficient, and have less heat and less back pressure. Just remember, less heat is going to be good because these pistons will crack if you get them hot. And that's why you need the step colder plugs. That's why you need the intercooler. And that's why you need a good flowing exhaust and you need a high flow downpipe. I also highly recommend doing a Symposer delete. So what that allows is a more true vacuum source for your bypass valve on your stock turbo, or to run a vacuum source to a external blow-off valve on your charge pipes. Moving on from the 270 wheel mark to the 300 max mark. So this is the cap. Now there has been people that have made probably 310 wheel horsepower, but that is a special occasion on the stock turbo. Generally the 270 to 300 wheel mark range for the stock turbo is the limit. To reach this limit, you need an ethanol tune, and that requires custom tuning with your Cobb V3 or SCT programmer. You're going to want an E30 blend or higher. That's going to allow you to make more horsepower because the octane is past 93 octane. It'd be more like 97 or 98 octane at that point. Also, if you want to add free horsepower, this adds about 10 to 15 wheel horsepower depending. It'll tighten your internal wastegate canister. Basically, it tightens your tension on your wastegate actuator on your turbo, and by tightening that, it allows you to hold more boost pressure longer and it won't open up as soon. Personally, if I were going to go max out my turbo, I would not do this mod, but if you're tight on money, then this mod is for you. I would definitely highly recommend getting the Turbo Smart internal wastegate, no matter if you're chasing 300 wheel horsepower max for a stock turbo or you're just wanting to run this range right here. The Turbo Smart is over here because this is what's going to allow you to run up to 300 wheel horsepower more efficiently. It's going to hold the boost pressure evenly throughout the RPMs, and your torque and horsepower will not drop as soon as it would with the stock internal wastegate actuator. You're also going to want to run a 7 psi to 11 psi spring depending on your goals for horsepower. If you're going to want to max it out, I would recommend the 11 psi spring. If you don't have E85 in your area or you don't want to run ethanol, you can run water meth. I highly recommend the AEM V3 or V2 kits. They're definitely the best out there. I think they're better than the Snow Performance kits. This will allow you to run up to 300 wheel horsepower no problem, especially if you run port injection water meth. I believe it's Pro Meth that makes them, and that would be the best way to make 300 wheel horsepower, or even a 4-port aux kit, but I would not put that on the list just because it's not feasible. You're also going to want a full 3-inch intake tube going to your turbo. That's just going to allow the turbo to draw in as much air as possible. Even though it's got a 2-inch inlet on the turbo and the 3-inch is overkill, it's going to allow to be more efficient and capture as much air as possible and compress it to make what you need. So the gap I recommend on a step coulter plug would be a 26 thousandths or a 28 thousandths range. Brisk plugs come at 28 thousandths, so when you gap them down to 26 thousandths, especially if you're trying to max things out on the stock turbo. Also, the NGK 6510s or any NGK plug, they come gapped at 44 thousandths. The reason is because they're designed for NA applications. That's why they come gapped like that. And they're not actually designed to be gapped lower than 30 thousandths. It states it right on NGK's website. And I've even spoken to the NGK salespeople and tech. So that's why people have issues with the NGK 6510s opening up, because the ground strap is not meant to be bent past its limits or below its limits of 30 thousandths. So that is a failure point. That's why I highly recommend the Brisk plugs. This is the 250 to 300 wheel horsepower range for the stock turbo Focus ST. This is everything that you would need to make this horsepower. Give the video a thumbs up, like, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.